Which part of your picture do you want me to demonstrate? Like right here?
Yes.
Okay. So here is Herveto's picture. Shh. So we have a seahorse here, and the area he's really concerned about is this area right in here with the crease with the neck. So that's what we're going to work on. So what I'm going to do first is I start everything with a tissue rub because tissue rubs are the best. So I'm going to take my really nasty, dirty Kleenex. Yay! And I'm just going to go ahead and rub this in. So I get a nice base layer. I'm going to go ahead and label this seahorse.
Are you recording?
I am indeed. Okay, so I'm going to use my 2B pencil to start with because I can always add more layers of value with a darker pencil later. So it's nice to just sort of build from light to dark. If you can think from light to dark in art, you will actually be very successful in any kind of art you make because most people want to put lots of dark colors on right away. And that's not a wrong way to make art. It just can be more challenging depending on your medium. So I'm going to really quickly just sketch in a few lines here because you guys are lucky you've already done your contour. I have no contour, so I have to get this contour going as I go. So I see that there's a lot of these little curvy lines coming out of this neck. And this is, so I'm basically working on this area right in here. So I like to typically work with the side of my pencil first because it gives me a smoother gradient overall. So I'm going to go ahead in here with the side of my pencil and get this dark mark in here. And then I'm going to come out along this line, and as I go away from this darker area, I'm going to use less pressure. I like to turn my paper when I'm working because I'm old now, so I can't bend my wrists in strange positions and hold it that way anymore. So I just say, you know what, paper, you're going to move the way I want you to move. So don't be afraid to move your paper around, to stand up if you need to. All of those things are perfectly okay. I'm just going to do that. So this is the first step. And then on this side there's a little bit of darker shadow, so I'm just going to slide this in here. And then I'm going to switch to blending stub. So anytime I put down some values, I'm going to want to blend the edges where the two values meet. So you're going to hear me say that a lot, but you may not really understand what that means. So a value is any shade of gray. Because we're not working with color right now, we're working with value. We're working with lights and darks. So when I have two shades of gray next to each other, I'm going to blend the edges of them together so they create a gradient. Remember our favorite word? Gradient. Okay, so I'm going to make this right now. I'm going to use the side of the blending stub because I want this to be nice and smooth. I'm going to apply a little bit more pressure where I want it to smooth out a little faster. And now over here, when I use this, I'm going to blend along the line like I was drawing. And because I sort of helped myself by already creating a gradient slightly with the pencil, this is going to smooth a little easier, and we're going to see this change from light to dark. All right. So far so good. But it still looks like a weird sun, and you're like, Mr. Lilla, what the heck are you drawing? Alright, so now I am going to come back with my eraser pencil. Now I have two eraser pencils. So remember I have this little teeny tiny one? This one is for very, very, very small details. I only have 5 of these. These ones are actually a lot more expensive than these ones. This one is $10 each. So we need to make sweet love to these, okay? So we need to keep them, we need to take them on romantic dates, we need to keep them safe and show them how much we appreciate them. Alright, so I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to erase very lightly because there is an edge right in here. I can't even see that. Still trying to find the right spot to put all this stuff. So there is a lighter spot right in here, so I'm going to come down into this. I'm going to add this lighter edge, and then there's sort of this wiggly lights that come away from it, so I'm going to wiggle those lights in. Okay, now in here, along these areas, almost in the middle of these is a lighter highlight. So I'm going to erase them in, and all of this is going to look strange to start with. And that's because everything's not blended in yet. So things are going to stand out really bold and be too bright. So see that? So now it looks crazy. I'm going to switch to my smaller blending stub. So I'm going to switch to this one because this one I have a little bit more control with because the surface area is smaller. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, I have several bags of blending stubs, all different sizes. So when you are working in a small area, you can use a small blending stub. So what I'm going to do now is on this edge, I'm going to rub very gently in circles on each side of the white highlight to blend it into my surrounding grays. So this is time consuming, but it is worth the effort. Now I'm still going to have to come back in and add some more shadows, and that's completely okay. When you're going back and forth in art, it's called the push and pull method, because what's happening is you are pushing some parts away by blending them away, and then you're coming back in with darker values or erasing in either one of those, and you're pulling out more intense values. We really want to see a lot of high contrast in our artwork. And we're going to have some subtle areas, but overall we really need that high contrast to pop things forward and make it look more three-dimensional. And that's why I was really picky about picking the photos for you guys, because it's easy for me to find a picture that has that intensity of value and amplify it so that it'll turn into a really nice drawing. Alright. So far, like that looks a lot smoother, right? But it still needs a little bit more love. So I'm going to switch to a 4B now. And I'm going to come back into this area. And I'm going to go ahead and add some more of this darker value. And I'm going to fade it out a little bit. So my strokes are really smooth and even and right next to each other. That's going to help me when I want to blend this, that it fades in an even format. Now in here there's a little bit more texture, so I might actually go ahead and add some wiggly lines. So remember we did all of those different texture charts, and part of that was so we could use different techniques when needed to create these effects. So using something like some loose wiggly lines is actually going to help give a sense of texture here. That we may not have seen before. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and blend this out just on this part right in here. And then I see that this area has a brighter highlight right there. So I'm just going to gently smooth on the top of this so that it fades these ones back so they're not as bright. And then I'm going to come back with the eraser pencil and I'm going to pick up where I should have that really bright highlight. Okay, and I'm not really happy with that area right here. I want this to be a little darker, so I'm going to come in. Now, see how dark this pencil is? This is actually an 8B. Nice and dark. Okay, and then on top of these, that's where we have then our like little marks, our darker gray spots. I'm just going to put a couple of those on. So it looks like a funky E. Okay. And I'm just going to blend a little bit more because, hey, why not? Nope. You know, life is way more fun when you add sound effects. All right. And how do you feel about seahorse wiggliness? Yep. Okay. Here you are, sir. I know it doesn't look like a heck of a lot right here, but when you pull it all together, it will look like a bit more. Oh, that's the other folder. All right, let's see who's next. Bella. All right. The eyeball. Say, look, it's seahorse magic today. We've got another seahorse. All right, so here's another beautiful example of a seahorse. And Bella would like us to work on the ojo. I should have just like smeared my whole paper. That would have been. We'll just do that really quick. All right. So same thing, I'm just going to really quickly sketch out what we've got going on here. So most of the eye is a big circle that has areas that kind of spiral in until we have the black center. We've got this one actually kind of squishes down on the top. Now, I really like to draw eyeballs. That's actually one of my favorite things to draw. Okay. Gesundheit. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start by just working with my 2B. And I'm going to fill this area in. I'm going to come back with the 8B in a little bit and get that nice and dark as soon as I'm sure I'm happy with the placement. And I'm going to use the side of the pencil because see all these areas in here that are darker? So I'm going to go ahead and use the side of the pencil and I'm going to sort of fade these in here. I'm going to work going around, so I'm going to move this photo out of the way for a minute so that I can work on going around the eyeball at the moment. And I'm still looking at my picture even though it is sideways and now upside down. You rang? All right. Okay. So it looks a little messy at the moment, and that's okay. I'm going to go back to my trusty dusty blending stub. And the beautiful part about this is I'm not rubbing really hard, but can you see, if you look really closely, how there's some lighter gray pockets in between my darker gray where I smeared? That's going to be really helpful for me because if you look at this photo, there's some lighter gray areas in between these darker areas. So I can go back and erase out some tiny stuffs in there. Now this eyeball has a lot of texture on it, so it's going to be fun to draw, but it also can seem challenging because of all the texture. So I'm just going to use my blending stub and go in a circle because this is a circular object. All right. And now I'm going to come back in with my darker value. So if you're not really sure, you can just continue to build up using a 4B next and then into your 6B. I'm feeling pretty good, so I'm going to go straight to my darker pencil. And I'm going to just go ahead and get this eye nice and dark in here, this part that should be really pitch black. Okay. And I'm just going to very carefully blow. Make sure when you guys are blowing your dust and stuff away, A, you're going to have to sweep it up later, but B, don't spit when you blow, because then you get spit on your picture. So gentle blowings. Now, these lines up in here actually have kind of a bumpy texture to them. So I'm going to come back in and I'm going to use sort of like a wave pattern here to go ahead and redraw. And I'm looking at the in-between areas that I drew before. And I'm using those as a guide. Okay, and this side tends to be a lot lighter, so I'm going to not put as much emphasis on that side. Okay, and then part of the eye comes up into here, so we'll just kind of do that. Okay, back to my trusty dusty blending stub. I'm just going to blend the edges of that, because that's where the two values meet. And I want to fade out some of that intenseness. Now, because this is such a small area, I'm actually going to go back to my other blending stub, because I think it'll be easier for me to manipulate. Yeah, that's a lot easier. So what do you guys think I should contemplate doing next? Highlighting, yeah, so eraser pencil. Alright, so I'm going to look really carefully. I can see that there's a lot of brightness right at the top here on this edge. And then there's some brighter areas in here that I'm going to go ahead and lift. I'm not going to push too hard though, because I don't want too much of that to pop up. And then in here, this is a lot brighter, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to erase in a curved manner because this is a curved surface. Alright. Okay, what comes next? Blending. Okay, I'm going to use the tiny blending stub because this is a tiny area. So I'm going to go ahead and go in between here. I'm just going to blend the edges because I like how intense this value is. I don't want to blend it all the way away. That's what the picture calls for. I'm just going to blend the edges to play down some of the intensity in some spots. And then I'm noticing that down in here, there's a little bit more value that's not showing up in the actual picture. So I'm going to go to a 4B. And I'm going to just use the tip of my pencil here. And I'm going to go and look carefully and noticing that there's some areas where it's going around my white area. So I'm going to put that in to help intensify this. Fill that up a little bit. What else am I missing in here? You guys see what else I'm missing? Yeah, the dots. So the dots are really small, right? So I would actually say for this, I would use this little tiny guy. Alright, so, and this would be kind of like the end of the road. So one of the last things you would do on your picture. So I'm just going to put it down, and I'm just going to gently wiggle in circles until it lifts some of the image up. And then I'm going to show you a really cool trick, because even though I'm lifting and I'm erasing and I'm trying to get all of these dots in, it's still kind of hard for them to stand out all the way. Do you guys agree it's still kind of hard to see all of those little dots?
Yeah.
So, at the very end of your picture, if you have something like this, I'm just going to add a little bit of stippling on top of the ones I already erased. So here's the key. You have to erase them first because we don't want it to be so intense that it's like, oh my god, what the heck is that? Otherwise it's just going to look fake and you're going to be like, crazy teacher, what did you do in my picture? But see how that helps just to give it a little bit more oomph, but it's not over the top. And that's because we made sure to put those little white, so I've just white stippled with the paint pen but because I already erased underneath, it allowed it to pop up a little bit more, and it allowed it to fade in the areas that it need to. Is that good for you, Miss Bella? All right. Come on up and grab your seahorse. Here is that for you, and then I'll just go ahead and write seahorse eye. All right, and then we'll go ahead and stick this aside for the time being. Get a new piece of magical paper. I know, I should just like come with tissue rubbed paper. All right, well that is picking its magic here. We'll just do this. Rihanna, you are the chosen one. There we go. Thank you, ma'am. Which part would you like me to demonstrate? The eye? Okay. Either one or?
Yeah, either one.
Okay. All right, so Rihanna has a husky here. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate on the eye. That's what she's asked me to do. So like I said, I love drawing eyes. So I did a quick tissue rub. Notice my tissue rub's really grainy, and that's because I just took one of my graphite sticks and rubbed it on there. That's why we don't want to typically rub the graphite stick straight onto this for a tissue rub, because it's not as clean. But for quick demonstration, it is going to have to do. All right, so I'm going to just really quickly draw in this eyeball. And I'm going to draw the whole outside shape to begin with. So if you're like, well, that's not the right shape, you're right. It's not the right shape for the interior of the eye, but for the whole section, including the black. Now, how many of you guys have drawn an eyeball before? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you, 7, ooh, nice. So if you look very carefully in a mirror, you'll notice that there is a shadow that goes over the top part of your eye, and that's actually the shadow of your eyelid on your eyeball. Every animal has a shadow on their eye from their eyelid. Now, animals are really cool because do you guys know that animals have a third eyelid? They have a third eyelid. It's pretty groovy. All right, so I'm going to start by filling in this black area. And I'm going to go softly first so that if I make a boo-boo, it's not too damaging to my picture. And I'm going to curve this. I'm going to really work on where anything curves, curving. The reason I'm going to use a darker pencil to start with is A, it's black, but also I want to use my blending stub to bring some of the darker value into the actual eye itself to create the shadow. The other thing I'm going to look at is, see all these little white hairs up here? Those are going to show up if I use the dark pencil and just bring out some little hairs. And the same thing over in here. If I flick this up and I look at this direction down here, I'm going to flick this down. That is going to help with some of our hair creation later. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and make this nice and dark. I'm going to switch to my 8B. Just because my 8B is a little bit softer than the ebony. And that's why I'm going to rub right back up along the edge of this eyeball again with this bad boy. Okay, I'm going to take my bigger blending stub right now because it's dirtier and I want the dirtier blending stub. I'm going to rub on the edge of these two values and I'm going to curve this as I go. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Did you see what I just did there? Even without filling in the rest of the eye, notice I just gave it a shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the bottom. And I'm going to fade it out. And I'm going to go around the edge of this eye in here. And I'm just going to blend it out. Now my eye got really dark. Totally okay. Because guess what we have? Erasers. Okay, I'm going to use the blending stub also up here. And I'm going to flick it out over these hairs that I drew. I'm going to come back and erase into those bad boys in a little bit. Beautiful. All right, I'm going to bring this down just a little bit because I want to add a little bit of oomph oomph. And I don't need the really tiny eraser pencil, but I do need this one. So I'm gonna get really close to my photo because I've got old lady eyes. And I'm noticing there's a highlight area in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and erase and curve. Anytime I'm working on a curved surface, I want to erase like I'm curving. So when we drew the spheres and we gave the illusion of spheres, what shape did we use every time we added a layer, a value? We used a what? A crescent. Because it's curved, right? A crescent is curved. So that helped the illusion of a round object. So my erasing is also going to be somewhat in a curved fashion to give the illusion that this is a curved surface. And you have to look really carefully because there's some little tricks to eyeballs. Some eyes have a little bright highlight down at the very bottom that's really small. So I'm going to erase that in. And get like that. Now the eye looks kind of creepy, right? It's like, woohoo, too much. So I'm going to come back in and I'm going to very softly blend these edges here and help them to fade into each other. So that they're not too much. I'm just going to soften, 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 soften. All right. And I'm now going to come back in with my 2B. And I'm going to add just a little bit of a shadow with the pencil now. Just to help this edge out, just a little bit. Same thing, curving my lines as I go. Okay. Okay, blend, 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 blend. And I'm just going to lift a little bit more right in here. Never be afraid to go back and forth when you need to. All right, pretty sexy, right? Before I just noticed that this is the wrong shape right on the end here, so I'm going to fix that bad boy. And I just saw one other thing. There should be a little bit of a spot right in here. All right, now I'm going to actually turn my whole picture to the side because I want to erase out these white hairs. When I want to erase out longer hairs, notice I extended the eraser pencil out a bit. That's going to allow me to flick the eraser as I go. And it's going to create a little bit more realistic hairs in here. And I'm always watching the directions of the hair in my picture. Now, in order to get these really bright hairs, I had to have this gray value. Okay, and then down here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flick into those in-between areas where I left some pencil strokes. That's going to help create that layering of some of those lighter and darker hairs. All right. Oh, perhaps I should also turn my photo the same direction. That might be helpful, just slightly. Now, in this section in here, some of the hairs are darker. So I'm going to come back with my darker pencil. And I'm just going to draw in between where I erased out some of these lighter hairs where I already see some dark gray. And then I'm going to blend them back. Sorry, I'm trying to go really fast so I can get another drawing in maybe. Okay, and really quickly, I'm gonna erase out just a tad. All right. How does that work for you guys?
Good.
Good? Happy? All right. Rihanna, does that make you happy? All right, here's your wolf eye. Like I said, I like drawing eyes, so anytime I get to draw eyeball, I'm happy. All right, what time are we getting out of here? We're at 25. So, hey, guess what? It's time to clean up. So I'm sorry I only got to do 3. If you would like me to demonstrate on your picture, really quick guys, just hold on. If you would like me to demonstrating on your picture, you can always come in during tutorial and I will do an individual demonstration just for you. Okay?